well, again, I'm making the same mistake again, morning, afternoon, or evening with us. So we're talking about the internet today, and we have some really fantastic speakers in line for us. So I'm really excited. I'll be sharing my screen. The way we're doing this is each of us has, a short presentation. We'd like to use a bit of visual aid. I mean, despite all the doubts about PowerPoints and so on, but we think a bit of short slides will help in this case. But for me, it'd be slightly longer than others. Just to set the scene, I'll be sharing my screen. Oops. Sorry. Okay. Well, I will get started. I want to thank, before I start, I want to thank the organizers, Internet Governance Institute, Internet Society in Nepal, Internet Exchange Nepal, and Nepal Internet Foundations, and of course, .Asia, the Secretariat, for organizing this great event and for getting all of us together this week. Well, if you don't know about Internet Society, this might be a good place to start. We think the internet should be for everyone, and we work towards reaching our vision by building, promoting, and defending a bigger and stronger internet. So if you don't know us, we are a global nonprofit organization connecting and empowering communities to ensure the internet remains open, globally connected, secure, and trustworthy. And on the right, you'll see a picture of our Nepal chapter doing an event in a rural community in 2018. In fact, if you're interested, the Nepal chapter's website is over here. So I want to talk about the internet and why it is such an incredible success. In fact, last year, a team of us at the Internet Society started a project to understand what the internet really is. I mean, we use it all the time to send emails, share pictures, but we don't, most of us, for most of us, the internet infrastructure is invisible, right? And we only, touch, our computers, our devices, but in fact, there are a lot of different parts which are really important in keeping the internet open and decentralized, right? So the project that we did last year, the IWN Internet Way of Networking project, kicked off with an exploration of what makes the internet. Essentially, what makes the internet so valuable to us. We believe articulating the features will help us know what to protect and how to ensure a healthy evolution of the internet, so that our future generations can continue to benefit from this life-changing technology for us all. Well, this is a bit like the internet. Of course, it's a funny, comical version of a representation, but it can help show us two distinct features about the internet in relation to our topic today. The first is that you can see there is no central authority controlling who can or cannot be on the internet. It is open to new networks. When you join the network, you can reach any other part of the network. The second point is that it's again a decentralized mesh network. It means that when one network goes down, other networks around it are not affected by it. They can still work. This contributes to the resilience of the internet. So by extension, this also means that each network can make their own decision about which network to connect with according to their own needs. And after a bit of research, these are the 5 critical properties that we came up with that we feel underpin the internet's success. And these are critical properties because of the benefits they bring. For instance, I'll give you, let's go through them quickly. The first one, accessible infrastructure with a common protocol. It is about the fact that the network is open to anyone who wants to participate. As a consumer, as an information provider, or an infrastructure builder, there is no central authority dictating who, how, and where connections are made. And the network can grow organically to support the needs of its users. So when this happens on a global scale, it creates a global internet infrastructure. Connecting with one gives you access to the whole internet. There is no more agreements needed. It's not like once you enter a different country, you need to be on a different internet, right? The second point, open architecture of interoperable and reusable building blocks. It is about the fact that the internet is built to be built upon. It gives you the bare basic, and it's for you to decide whether you want more security or privacy. The third point, decentralized management and a distributed routing system. It's about the fact that each network makes their own decision independently based on their own needs. Again, there is no central direction dictating how and where connections are made. So the network grows organically, driven by local interests. Because of time, I'll skip the two, but if you're interested, feel free to check out our website. Let's take an example. We'll use the critical properties, of the internet way of networking that I just talked about as a lens to look at how a country's policy to set up a national internet gateway affects the internet infrastructure. You see that I don't say which country here because that is not important in our case. We want to study the effect of the policy, but not to study the country itself. So as part of this, so in February, a government passed a law requiring all internet service providers to reroute their services through a national internet gateway within the next 12 months. The stated aim is to facilitate and manage internet connections for the enhancement of effective and efficient national revenue collection, protection of national security, and assurance of social order, culture, and tradition, among others. Think of it this way. The national internet gateway will incorporate and manage the domestic internet exchange and the international internet gateway. So the DIX, the internet exchange, will be the national interconnection point for the ISPs in the country, while the IIG, the international internet gateway, carries internet protocol data in and out of the country. So both DIX and IIG must be operated in the cities identified. So far, there are 4, and with a few others to be identified. So let's look at how the policy affects the internet. Let's try to apply this model I just talked about to this example. We think the policy impacts 2 of the properties that I talked about just now, the first and the third one. About the first, the fact that the national internet gateway operators has control over all international access means that no other network in the country is able to access the global internet independently or directly. The choke points will severely limit the access of providers and internet users to the global internet. The hierarchical network topology or network layout and the tight control of a few centrally controlled international gateways, it means that the country interacts with only a small part of the global internet. And about the third point, the internet, well, let's understand that the internet is a network of networks. Each network makes their own independent decisions on how to route traffic to its neighbors based on its own needs and local requirements. No central direction or coordination dictating how and where connections are made, so the network can grow organically. I'm starting to appear like a broken record now. But since ISPs route their traffic through the national internet gateways, the policy centralizes and limits routing choices. This means the routing of traffic between networks will be less efficient than it could be. Let's look at this, image again. The hierarchical network structure with the national internet gateway operators running international gateways the result will be choke points for international access. That means fewer options for interconnection. In this case, let's look at the pink ones that will be the one going out of service. Well, if it happens more intensely, you can see what happens when interconnection is further limited. Having a few designated companies running the international internet gateways that funnel all internet traffic in and out of the country creates a hierarchical network topology that is a move away from the mesh network that the internet is, but towards a tree network structure that has clear hierarchy. That severely impacts networks, global reach, and limits collaborative networking. I'll be quick from here, but I just want to say, I only talked about the infrastructure part of the internet, and there are a lot of other important considerations. For instance, for us to enjoy the full benefits of the internet, we also have to consider security, privacy, and trustworthiness. And I have to stress that at this time, due to COVID-19, businesses, big or small, they're transforming how they do business. They're increasing reliance on the internet. So it is an important time to be making these decisions, right? So it would be my last slide, but I want to conclude on this because I want to stress that many of the potential benefits that the internet brings, they are not maximized when things like that happen, and it's likely to be the average users in the country who are worse off because of this. So that's why we think when governments or policymakers or business leaders, before they make decisions, we could assess how it impacts the internet. Many countries do impact assessment for the environment, for instance, to evaluate whether the new airport is worth it. We think a similar thinking should apply to the internet as well. I'll stop sharing here, and that's my presentation. Thank you. I will move on to our next speaker, but we welcome your questions anytime in the chat or after our presentations. We're moving on to our second speaker, Charles.
Okay. Okay, can the Secretariat help me? Yes, thank you very much. Hi, I'm Charles Mock. I'm very glad to be here this morning with all our fellow speakers. I'll try to go quickly. Thanks to Adrian for the very good introduction about the internet infrastructure and the internet, how we want to see the internet continue to be. I think to summarize some of the things that what he was talking about would be that, well, we want the internet to be globally connected. We obviously also want the internet to be secure and trustworthy. I think trustworthy is very important because in the past, I think the whole design of the internet, we talk a lot about decentralization these days, probably because of blockchain and so on. But in fact, decentralization was very much part of the internet. If you look at some of the, like that graph or that diagram that Adrian showed before, with many different nodes all around and all interconnected. So interconnection, when we first think about the internet, that was part of the resilience of the internet as well, right? So that's what we wanted. And if I think back to about 10 years ago or even longer, we always talk about, and that's why I shared this particular tweet that I found from almost 10 years ago that I show on the slide. At that time, ICANN CEO Rod Backstrom, and he was saying that, oh, one world, one internet. Everybody can use the same one internet, right? And I thought, over the last year or few years, how much have you heard people talking about one world, one internet anymore? We're talking about an internet that is becoming fragmented because of many reasons. Like Adrian was talking about countries, probably quite a few countries, more and more, developing their own versions of an internet gateway that are mandated by law. When we used to say the internet was a network of networks and not controlled by government, now the role of government has changed and it has become bigger and bigger. And it was very different for those of us who have been with the internet or use the internet or have been developing either our business, our technologies, and so on with the internet for many years, more than 10 years, 20, 30 years. For us, it's changed. What are we talking about today? We're talking about misinformation. And misinformation, people usually blame the big tech companies, but it comes from users as well. We blame governments of coming in and doing a lot of these censorships and surveillance. Well, surveillance sometimes is also coming from big business as well. So that has changed a lot. The perception of the internet from all its users, the roles of the governments, the roles that the governments see themselves that they need to make. They need to take that particular role of bigger and bigger control. Just like in Adrian's slide was talking about why they are doing all these. They're saying that they need to do it because of national security, because of protecting revenues, even protecting culture. So government wants to come in, and then they want to say, big tech, you should get out. So what are we doing right now? How can we as users and participants in the internet do about it? What are some of the things that are missing links? So I want to propose that we want to really re-examine and see how we can re-empower the users through using new technologies. There must be new technologies that develop that put users in control rather than the big tech platforms or governments. And how do we strengthen the multi-stakeholderism that we have started? How do we ensure that, okay, there will be some regulations, governments will come in, but what are the rules of the games that the governments will have to follow so that it will lead to a better internet and not an internet that is dictated by the wills of not just one, but many different governments of the world. And for those of us who have dealt with government officials, they are sometimes, and most of the times, the people who are most uninformed about what is really going on in the internet, both in the technology manner and also in terms of regulatory angle, if we think about it. So that's what I want to start our discussion, going after from this point on. And that's my part. And I hope that we'll set the stage for more questions and discussion from our other speakers, panelists, and also from our viewers, participants from all parts of Asia and the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. That is really thought-provoking and will really set us up nicely for the discussion later on. Let's move on to another presentation by Yingzu.
Hi everyone, I'm Yingzu Chen from Taiwan. Many thanks for having me here today. And let me share my screen for everyone about my, okay, let's see. This one. Please wait me for later. So maybe now I see some issues from my side. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the secretary. So today I list 2 pages about the beauty and ugly of the internet. Actually, the title is I stole from the APrIGF and National Regional Initiative, their topic. But of course, there are at least some point of the ugly side or beautiful side of the internet. I just thought and typed it down quickly. So not only those points. So we may talk about that later. So let's talk about the negative side first. Please, the next. Oh, okay. The beautiful side. And so I list 6 points of the beautiful side. And based on the concept of the economist Paul Ramos' endogenous growth model and our discussion during these days, human capital and higher technical level are 2 essential factors that positively improve the whole country economies. So we just know a stable, high quality internet brings meaningful connection, help people educate themselves and upgrade job skills and stimulate the technological innovation. And that is a positive circulation to develop a sustainable internet and digital economy. And without a reliable internet, we don't need to talk about the health, digital, economic growth. And next slide, thank you. And this slide is talk about the negative side about the internet. As we know from the speakers, the 2 speakers, and we know the 3 points of the slide on the slide also bring the internet. Also breaking the internet interoperability, and they also bring the internet fragmentation, especially the government governs and regulate the internet infrastructure and the telecommunications. As we know, the telecommunication and the internet infrastructures are 2 critical fundamentals of the internet. Without them, we don't have the internet. So my personal observation is keeping the data interoperability and the consistencies and stable. To have a stable internet is the way to have a successful internet. And I think those things we are talking about today is the public code of the internet. And we also rely on health internet infrastructure to spread information and educate everyone. And that's my personal perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Ying-Chu. That is really interesting, the beauty and ugly of the internet. Yeah. Before questions, let's hold on to them. Let's move on to our next speaker, George Michelson.
Thank you. This slide is just here so that my email address is available to anybody who'd like to talk to me later on. Can we go to the next slide, please? So this is a diagram that I've taken from a wonderful talk that was given by Steve Deering back in 2001. If you don't know Steve, he's one of the principal architects of multicast IP and also IP version 6. And he presented this pack, which I really strongly recommend you read, which discusses at some length the advantages of a design this compellingly simple. And it really comes down to 2 stories about the internet protocol, IP, and that's IP over everything. You can run the internet protocol over any kind of substrate underneath you like. It runs over satellite networks, it runs long line to Mars, it runs over anything you have available. And the other story is everything over IP. We used to live in a world where things happened over specific protocols that were suitable and designed specifically for that job. So we used to send media, online media, over protocols designed for isochronous communication, regular time interval packets. We don't do that anymore. We use IP even though it has problems like jitter and delay and packet loss, because it's just such a compellingly simple model to use. And this actually is one of those proof by example situations. We designed our model of the network stack simply, and it's kind of the KISS principle. Keep it simple as a solution. I know there's another meaning of that phrase, but that'll do for now. So to me, the reason the internet succeeded is actually because we made that decision. We made a decision to design this thing as an hourglass with a narrow waist, and that narrow waist of IP is the vehicle for the success of all the different substrates we can run on and all the different applications we can run over it. Can you go to the next one, please? So, unfortunately, with all these stories about let's do it simple, and this is my line of reasoning, kind of carries the seeds of its own success and failure together at the same time. And it really is that if you consider it as an hourglass and you think about what an hourglass is, they are really remarkably fragile. They have this narrow waist. They're easy to break. Well, in some senses, the IP network stack is fragile and it's quite easy to break. Now, because it's simple mechanistically, it went everywhere. But because it was simple, we didn't think about the governance and regulatory, the societal considerations of what would happen after we'd released this into the world and how people would wind up using it and engaging in it. So everything funnels through the IP layer. Well, that goes to a sense people bring to the table. I know, let's control and constrain this at the IP layer. The problem is that often actually doesn't work. Either it has unintended consequences and it damages communication that people are not seeking to regulate or limit, or it's basically a security pantomime. It doesn't actually constrain people because it only constrains the IP that is amenable to being constrained in that particular situation. So there's a certain quality that this belief, oh, the waist of the hourglass, that's where we should put our eyes when we think about regulation and governance for national interest and legal considerations in society. It's not actually a good fit. And I think that goes to a message I'd like to bring to the table, which is that I still believe very strongly issues around the nature of society really can't be fixed by technology-specific laws. We need people to be technology agnostic when thinking about how to construct the rules we want to have around use of systems. And I want people who are discussing governance and regulation to think about an impact of applying that to IP, both in the lower layer and in the upper layer. If you think about lower layers, this often goes to matters of national sovereignty. So fiber structures passing through land or on sea, this is directly related to territorial boundaries and to the law of the sea. So it's natural that people are going to look at this and start to examine the extent to which regulation of those physical aspects relates to IP and relates to the internet service. It's not going to work out well if you think constraining access to fiber technology will limit the reach of IP. It runs over so many different things. But if you go to the other end of the hourglass and you think about the applications, it's very easy to look at what is happening in Facebook or WhatsApp or maybe in WeChat or with Amazon or with Alibaba and say, this needs to be regulated. But it's actually very hard to understand the nature of governance and regulation that you can apply there that isn't going to have some unintended consequences. But even noting that, I do believe that the best way to deal with these problems is to try to consider them as narrowly as possible and to address the questions of governance and societal change at the right layer of the system. So there's a metaphor that we often use in the DNS. Sorry about the typo on my slides, by the way. And that metaphor is we're changing the engines in mid-flight. And really, I think that's quite a strong metaphor for what we're doing here in this kind of conversation. We're on this plane and we realize some aspects of what's going on here as we're in cruise mode aren't quite what we think. And the question that is posed is just how far out along the wing do we want to go to start fiddling with the fine tuning of the engine without interfering too much in the stability of the flight? It's not that we don't have to do this, it's about how much and when. And that, to me, is the core problem we're facing here. How can we understand the amount of change we want to bring into the system to get where we want to be? So, Internet Protocol, it's a 40 or 50-year-old protocol. Internet Protocol version 6, it's been a 20-year journey to get to uptake somewhere between 30 and 40%. Internet Protocol without adequate consideration of public interest governance, security, and other questions, I don't think we're going to get there in much under the lifetime we've already experienced. This is a long flight. Thank you.
Thank you, George. That is really thought-provoking. I for one would like a slim waist. But let's move on to our last speaker, Pavel. Over to you.
Yeah, just give me a second. Can you see my slides?
Yes, but not in the presentation mode.
Oh, okay. I guess they're okay now. I hope.
It's now in your presenter's mode with your notes on.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Yeah, I think it should be okay now.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So good morning, everyone, and of course, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. I'm Pavel, and I'm originally from Bangladesh, but I've grown up in Thailand, and I'm a postgrad student in ICT. So speaking today at this session, honestly, is such an honor because you could say I'm the least experienced amongst all the other panelists that are there. I've not had that much experience, but still I'd like to put in some thought on what I think about why open and interoperable internet infrastructure is the key to the internet's continued success. So let me just go through briefly on what I think are the principles that define open and interoperable internet infrastructure. And there are a couple of them. Sorry if I can't see. Yeah. So of course, human rights must be protected and promoted. And that's the first thing that always comes to mind when we're talking about what makes the internet infrastructure equal or justified to everyone who's using the internet. But as you will see all the other principles, and as I will go through them very briefly, you maybe sort of start to realize that although we talk about the continued success of the internet infrastructure, have we really been that successful? When you look at the principles like, when we encourage the internet's open, decentralized, and internet connected nature, for example, how successful have we been when we think about the recent incidents that have been happening in a few countries, which I will not name, around the world? And, we want to advocate for initiatives to address the fundamental causes of internet fragmentation. Now, if for our audiences who have been listening in, I'm sure they've been hearing the term fragmentation over and over again. And I can't emphasize how important it is, because fragmentation doesn't just come in the technical or a social aspect. As a matter of fact, it comes in like the when we're talking about policy, in the policy aspect as well, because it's important when we talk about internet fragmentation that the countries or nations and governments worldwide need to address standard policies for how the internet should be utilized by users. And that's pretty much near impossible because every government has a different agenda on what they want to do with their internet. And we move on to, the promotion of collaboration in order to improve internet security and trust. But if you look back, it's, as we mentioned, there is no standard for governments to collaborate or cooperate unless there is something at stake. And what can they do that gives them the advantage or helps them through? or basically gives them the upper hand over other governments. And we talk about making a commitment to maintaining and strengthening the multi-stakeholder model. Maybe this is something we can work on, because as you know, organizations like ICANN, ISOC, and APNIC and APrIGF have been really committed to this. So in a way, bringing all us as speakers, as panelists to talk today is in a way, we're trying to talk about this as stakeholders from different fields of studies and different people in the industry. We also encourage measures to boost significant internet accessibility. Now, this is, when we talk about accessibility now, that's a big debate that is going on right now, because not everyone has equal access to the internet. And that is something that really bothers me and keeps me up at night. The fact that we have such a huge digital and gender divide, not everyone has the equal access to the internet, even though the internet is open and accessible to all in a way. And finally, we have to actually protect and support the freedom of information globally. And honestly, this just comes down to one simple thing: the freedom of speech, the freedom of expression. And that is something that I guess we can debate on forever, and we'll still not get to a conclusion, because like I said, it's up to the governments and the nations to come up with their own principles on how they can make this successful. And so far, it's not been too great. So how can we collaborate to develop this awareness about internet infrastructure in order to encourage a sustainable, inclusive, and trustworthy internet for all? I want to come through the capacity building aspect. That's the perspective I'm going through for now, because what I have noticed is that if we start early and we really indulge the youth into internet governance from a young age, I feel this is one way we can really move forward with the principles that we're aiming to achieve. Because while I understand that these organizations are doing a fantastic job in capacity building and getting fellows, youth fellows and professional fellows to come and join in discussions where we do talk about internet governance, such as this conference in itself. But I understand that it's a bit too late. And what I want to do is have internet governance in education, because if internet governance is so significant and more people are getting access to the internet every day, then why aren't we teaching it as a subject and from a grassroots level? I want kids learning internet governance, and I want them to understand the severity of the situation we face today and not take the internet for granted. Because when people don't understand how internet infrastructure works, that's what they tend to do. And at the same time, even though they want to have access to the internet, they want to use the internet, they don't really trust the internet because they don't understand it. And so this is my point of view on how we can actually start to collaborate with the youth and kids from a younger age, teach them from a younger age that internet shouldn't be taken for granted. And there are principles we need to maintain in order to make sure that it is equal for all. So that's all for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Pavel, for the really thoughtful remarks. I feel we can open the floor to questions, but while we're waiting for questions from anyone, is free to raise your hand or type your questions in the chat. But let me kick this off. I feel if I could summarize anything from all the presentations just now, it's clear that we all feel there are certain things that have to be protected or defended about the internet. And there are, well, yes, there are bad things. There are the ugly things that Ying-Chu talked about that we should take care to control, to limit, right? So I want to ask to you, to the speakers, like, how do you want the internet to be in the future? It's quite a provocative question, because I want to say, let's say 50 years from now, do you want the same internet like we have today, And do you feel we are going in the right direction? If not, what else has to be done? Can I, Charles, would you like to venture an answer?
Venture. I'll try to venture to answer this question. It's very difficult to foresee something in 10 or even 50 years' time. But I think maybe at least in my mind, let's make internet simple. So that it's just like air. It's just like well, think about air in 50 years' time. That's actually a very horrific thought. But but let's think about the internet as something that is very simple, that everybody have access to, really democratic in a way that we really can take it for granted. Okay. Because we're saying that we shouldn't take the internet for granted. That's true. But what if it is so simple and equal that we can take it for granted? I mean, that is something that not necessarily what I think the internet will be in 50 years, but like what I hope the internet will be. Is it going in the right direction? I don't think it is going in the right direction. I think actually it's probably going in the wrong and the opposite direction. So it's the question of how we're going to listening to all the other panelists talking. I think what the urgent task in front of us right now is how do we develop the more democratic and participatory structure for people, young people included, but all people to be able to participate in the process, to make decisions for the internet, and not just make either the big corporation or worse, I think, the government to make that decision for us.
Thanks, Charles. I see two hands, but I want to make sure if these are like responses to the questions or new questions. Joyce. If the response, yeah.
I think Joyce should speak first.
Okay, yeah, of course. Please, Joyce.
Sorry, I'm not going to comment on the previous question. I was going to ask another question. So
a new question. Okay. Let's see if we have like other replies to the question before moving on to a new question. Yeah.
How about I do talk then, because perhaps my words go to the qualities of the question.
Please do. Yeah.
Like Charles, I don't think we can foresee 50 years. It's an impossible agenda. I love some of the images that come up in my various social media feeds of what people at the turn of the century imagined the future would be like. They got some of it right. They imagined online learning. The problem is they still had people wearing late Edwardian clothes. So you kind of can't always tell what's going to change and what's going to stay the same. I really liked what Pavel said about the quality of the missing component here is civics. I didn't go to religious education classes in my school. I was excluded because I come from an atheist family. And I realized much later on, I'd missed civics class. I didn't learn about the nature of discourse and the value of meeting and talking with people you don't necessarily agree with. And I think that's a huge missing quality in how we're helping people emerge into being grown-ups in the world. We're not always helping people understand how to value difference and talk about things. And I miss that. I actually place a huge amount of trust and goodwill in the generations to come. I think they're probably going to fix things, and I'd like to get out of the way and make it possible for them. Yongchu's idea of the beauty and the ugly really resonated for me, because many of the aspects of things we see talked about the internet focus on the ugly. They naturally do. News is like that. News tends to the bad side of the world. And I don't want to disrespect the ugly qualities that emerge, either from the misapplication of governance or from the lack of civics and the way people comport themselves online that can be so hugely destructive. The thing is that I do actually believe in the beauty. And oddly enough, the person who to me said it best is Hulun Zhao, when he came into one of the internet forums as the new Director General of the ITU. He took his tie off in this wonderful symbolic gesture and said, "You guys are online, you've got it made. I'm here for the next 2.5 billion people. How are we going to make this fly for them? And to me, I carry that story around with me. How do we keep this beautiful thing going for the next 2.5 to 3 billion people and make the value proposition we brought to the table persist in the face of all these pressures to change things? I don't know, but I think someone else is going to have to fix it.
Thanks, George. Any other answers to the question?
So I jump in. So about the 10, I would like to say 10 years, because 50 years to me, I think I joined the internet about 20 years, but I see many different things from my joy in the beginning. So I would like to say 10 years later. And I think many things will be changed. I'm sure that will be a positive way, will be to go to the positive direction. Because when I see the development of the blockchain or cryptocurrencies, they are going to another way. I would not to say that is a negative way, but I don't like the way personally. That's my personal. I don't like that way. I think there should be more application on the blockchain technology. And the other topic is about the internet governance education. So I think at the beginning, I think that from the George's presentation, he said it is too simple, so we forget to the governments. Also, the technical community also forgot how to educate young generate, because that is very difficult with the technical word. So I see some books is about the internet governance from the technical side or policy side or academia's perspective. So I think the 10 years later will be more people to engage the internet governance. I think that is, I can show about that. But how to how to make more inclusive with other stakeholders, that will be an issue to talk about that. And thank you.
Thank you, Ying-Chu. Let's move on to Joyce.
Thanks, Adrian. And thanks very much to all the speakers. I found this session very useful, very informative, also very thought-provoking. My question is, could you elaborate, you Adrian, or any of the other speakers, elaborate on what are the negative impacts on end users if there were further centralization of the internet? So in the case, for example, of the National Internet Gateway, what exactly are the perceived harms? Is it to do with speed? Is it to do with security? I think if we could talk a bit more directly what those negative impacts are, I think it would be a lot more understandable. Thanks.
Thanks, Joyce. Well, since the question is for me, I'll have it go first. Yeah? Thanks, George. So in the case of the National Internet Gateway Policy, the negative impacts, in fact, I had it, but apparently not. I didn't say it clearly quite enough, right? But if there are like further centralization, there are centralization for different things here. I mean, there is this, in terms of service providers and in terms of how they make routing decisions, right? So, and if that happens, I argue it would mean less resilience and less efficiency for internet users in the end. And you're right. After all, for individual users, it might mean that there would be perhaps are less reliable. Perhaps, okay, that's a 10-minute mark. That it might mean that the internet would be less reliable, would be, would be slower, perhaps, and it, not to mention other potential problems that it might bring in terms of privacy, security, right? So these will impact individual users directly. And thanks for the question, so that I can bring these out. George.
So I'm going to try and stay within the technology box because I think it's the one I fit best in. And internet protocols typically work best when they're about what I consider one of the fundamentals, the end-to-end idea. I have to know how to find you, Adrian, but once I have found you, you and I exchange packets quite freely. And all of these mechanisms for constraint wind up converting something between two people into something that necessarily is between at least three people, because you have to use an intermediary to either seek permission to establish the connection or to establish how to find the legitimate path to the other party. And bringing a third party to the table changes the quality of so many things. It's easy to say it's changed privacy fundamentally, and it's quite hard to prove you can maintain unique privacy between two people when you bring a third person to the table. But it actually goes to all the things you said. It goes to resilience, and it goes to sustainability, and it goes to scalability. Purely at the technical level, if you bring a third party to the table, you've designed for something that won't cope at scale. It can be love-bombed into failure just because so many people want to use that technology. And I think that's a shame, because it took something very simple and very easy to use for what is really a fairly fundamental thing here. I want to talk to you privately is a quite strong quality that we're all entitled to dream of, and changes it. And that's not good. I would like to say that there's actually a session later on in this meeting. I think it's in about 60 minutes, talking about some of the aspects of the technology and their signals for success and what they've brought to the table. And I'd really encourage people to go to that and participate, because it talks about a lot of this more clearly. Anyway, that's what I think.
Thanks, George. Any other replies to the question? If not, let's move on to Quasi Baby.
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. I am Kazi Baby from Bangladesh. Actually, we are working with the poor community, poor people, and they don't know how to read and write. So in our digital world, how we can develop them regarding internet access and website, because we are doing meeting through website or web or internet, but they can't access, they don't have access to internet, and how they can meet with the meeting and other program. So do you have any idea how we can develop them, the poor people, about internet?
Thank you, Kazi Baby. Does anyone want to have a go?
If you don't mind, I'll take a crack at that. Of course, thank you for the question. And it's something, because I'm from Bangladesh as well. So I totally understand what she means when she says that, people are not even educated enough. They don't have the digital literacy skills to get on meetings or programs that need their attention. And to be honest, I don't have the answer on how we can develop them overnight, because that's quite improbable. But I do believe that we have to start somewhere, and internet literacy is something we can begin. There are many best practices over the internet on how we can teach people in rural and remote areas regarding the internet. And because you're saying they can't read or write, it definitely means that the only way we can really help them right now is visual cues. It has to do with visual cues, or we need experts who are willing to dedicate their time to teach these people by hand, really on how we can, on how they can they have access to the internet, so how they can really utilize this access to the internet. It's good to know, though, that even people in Bangladesh who are in such remote and rural areas, with the country being so digitalized in recent times, that there are more and more people who are getting access. But right now, I do not have all the answers, but I guess we just have to start by enhancing them regarding their digital literacy skills. That's all.
Thanks, Pavel. Anyone else?
Oh,
Yes, please.
thank you for the question. The first things I think we need to think about their demands from their life. The first thing is about they need to survive and to have a better job. As the Pavel said, that educate is first, and then educate them to know how important about the internet and internet, how to impact their life, can help how internet can help them to have a better job, and then they will use how to use the internet to upgrade their job skills, to find a better job, to improve their personal economic situation, to they can have more time, or to have more entertainment. Even entertainment is the best way to know how internet can change their life. So the first thing is to understand their demand and to use the internet to make their to satisfy them, and they will know what the next to do. So that's my personal opinions.
Thanks, Inchu. And if I could, venture my own answer, I'd say that before we talk about computer or internet literacy, there is literacy itself to take care of. And, there are many other basic needs that people, don't enjoy all over the world, like clean water, clean air, like, safety, right? So it's a good reminder, Kazi baby, your question, that before we talk about the internet, that we're talking about those who are with access to the internet, but there are a lot of other people without access, and for us to extend the benefits of the internet to them, there is a lot more work to be done before we even talk about the internet. Yeah. So I see we have only a minute or two left. Let's do a round of perhaps like a summary, and I'll kick off first. Yeah, and if I could, summarize anything, I would say that we see a lot of policies or regulations coming out from different governments almost every day now, and a lot of them, talk about the digital economy. They talk about data localization and many other things, right? But what I think is the internet is, if anything is clear, I think the internet is really an ecosystem that has to be maintained and nurtured, and you can't expect to do different things to it without changing its course. So I feel there really has to be some sort of impact assessment. We have to identify the things that we need to protect. Yeah. So on to Charles.
Well, I think it's a very good start today. Some core discussion, basic discussion on a series of debates that we can have, because we touch on many topics, but we don't have time to really talk about them in more details. But the more you talk about it, the more you will see that the problems that we see about the internet right now are the problems of society, the problems that we see in each country. So how can we not deal with it in the same way we try to deal with these difficult problems within each of our countries and governments and societies? So that's actually my question to the answer about centralization. If you believe in centralization of power to the one government and one single government, that's one approach. Or you do believe in a more democratic people power system, that is another approach. And that is more like what our internet has been. So to close, I want to propose to use more technology to solve technology's problems. So including the problems about placing property. I think we can do a lot by using better technology to be suitable for those people and every people in the world, every kind of people using technology. And I guess this is for our young people to try to solve this problem and build a good internet for the next 50 years.
Thank you, Charles. I apologize for going over time, but we're getting there. Over to you, Ying-Chu.
Personally, I think education is very important, and especially the internet education. How to use the internet to find to do fact check, and how to find the correct answer or your satisfied answer to yourself is really important to everyone. Then there's another issue about the sustainability. I think if you don't have positive economic circulation, you won't have the sustainable internet. And the fundamental is the critical point. So I think besides those we talk about this in this forum and other forum, I think the educate about the basic internet infrastructure is very, very important. And that's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Ying-Chu. Over to you, George.
What the others said, I think they've spoken very eloquently and clearly. I've got nothing on that. I think they got it exactly right. I wish I could be as optimistic as Ying-Chu. I tend a little more towards Charles' concerns for the future. They said it.
Pavel.
I've just been taking a look at the chat, and it's amazing to see how people are really supportive of having IG in education, and just how the youth need to start from a younger age, and how internet governance is basically a life skill that we need to teach. So I guess that makes me happy to know that there are people, like-minded people, who have that same idea. And if there is a way we can, really get this started, to get kids and people and children in secondary schools to start learning about internet governance from a younger age, and the best practices on what they can do or not do on the internet. That would be amazing. And I hope that that's a start. That's one of the starts we can get to, or that can be one of the solutions to the problems Charles mentioned. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Pavel. I don't want to take any more of your time. We've gone 3 minutes past, but I want to thank everyone for coming. I want to wrap this up today. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.